I swear, the second my psychology professor announced the relationship dynamics assignment, the entire class started groaning like we'd just been sentenced to prison. Relax, Professor Bennett said, leaning against her desk with a smug smile. You'll be working in pairs. One person plays themselves, the other plays their romantic partner. You'll role-play conflict resolution scenarios in front of the class. That made it worse. A bunch of people laughed nervously while desks squeaked around me. I slumped lower in my chair, already praying I'd get paired with literally anyone low-key. Then Bennett started reading names, and my life immediately got ruined. Trevor Hayes, paired with Zachary Collins. The room exploded with whistles. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. Because Zachary Collins was my biggest problem. Not in the "he bullied me" way. Honestly, Zachary was annoyingly nice. That somehow made everything harder. He was the kind of guy who remembered people's birthdays, held doors open, and somehow looked ridiculously good doing absolutely normal things. Tall, dark blonde hair that always looked messy in a perfect way, broad shoulders, dumb smile. And, unfortunately for me, I'd had a crush on him since sophomore year. A crush I'd done an incredible job hiding. At least I thought I had. Looks like Trevor hit the jackpot, someone behind me muttered. I forced a laugh while heat climbed up my neck. Across the room, Zachary turned around in his seat and grinned at me. Guess we're dating now. The class laughed again. I smiled like a complete idiot. Guess so. Inside, I was dying. Professor Bennett started explaining the assignment while I tried to focus, but it was impossible because Zachary kept leaning over to whisper comments to me. This is so weird. She's enjoying this way too much. What if I'm a toxic boyfriend? His voice was low and warm every time he leaned close, and I hated how aware I was of every tiny thing. The smell of his cologne, his arm brushing mine, the stupid little laugh he did after every joke. By the end of class, Bennett handed each pair a printed scenario packet. Spend the next week preparing, she said. You'll perform next Friday, fully in character. Zachary looked at the packet and burst out laughing. Oh my God. What? I asked. He handed it to me. Scenario 4. Long-term couple navigating jealousy and unresolved romantic tension after one partner suspects emotional cheating. I stared at it, then at him, then back at the paper. You have got to be kidding me. I think we won, Zachary said. No, seriously, this is the worst one. Worst? He smirked. I think this one's fun. Easy for him to say. He wasn't secretly in love with his fake boyfriend. As everyone packed up, I shoved the papers into my backpack as fast as possible, hoping I could escape before my brain melted completely. Trevor. I turned. Zachary was slinging his bag over one shoulder, watching me. We should probably practice sometime. Yeah, sure. You free tonight? Tonight? I blinked. He laughed softly. It's not a marriage proposal, man. Right, yeah, sorry. God, kill me. I can come by your apartment after dinner, he offered. That works. Cool. Then he smiled again. That stupid smile that always made my chest feel tight. I'll text you. The entire afternoon felt cursed. I cleaned my apartment twice even though Zachary had already been there before. I changed shirts 3 times. At one point, I caught myself fixing my hair in the microwave reflection and had to physically walk away from myself. This was ridiculous. It was just homework. Except it didn't feel like homework when my crush was coming over to pretend to be my boyfriend. Around 7, my phone buzzed. Outside. My heart immediately started pounding. I opened the door, trying to act normal, but the second I saw him leaning casually against the hallway wall in a gray hoodie and jeans, all my thoughts completely disappeared. "Hey," he said. "Hey." He stepped inside, holding up a grocery bag. I brought snacks because apparently emotional cheating requires chips. I laughed despite myself. "You're so committed to the role." "I'm an artist." He kicked his shoes off and followed me to the living room like he'd done it 100 times before, which honestly, he kind of had. We've been friends for almost a year now, mostly through mutual classes and study groups. But this felt weirdly different already. Maybe because now there was an assignment forcing us to act like a couple. Or maybe because I couldn't stop imagining it. Zachary dropped onto my couch beside me and opened the packet again. "Okay," he said, "we need backstory." "For our fake relationship?" "Obviously." I groaned. "You're taking this too seriously. You want to fail? You know Bennett grades easy." "Trevor," he said dramatically, placing a hand on his chest. "Our love is falling apart. This matters." I laughed harder than I should have. Then he looked at me for a second too long, and suddenly the room got quieter. It happened sometimes with Zachary. These weird pauses where his expression softened just enough to make my brain short-circuit. He leaned back against the couch. "So," he said, "how long have we been together?" I swallowed. In the scenario." "Right." He smirked slightly like he noticed my panic. "You're cute when you're flustered, you know that?" My stomach flipped violently. I stared at him. "What?" But Zachary just grabbed a chip like he hadn't said anything at all. 3 years, he said casually. "That's how long we've been dating." And I suddenly had the horrible feeling this assignment was about to completely ruin my life. By the time we actually started practicing, I already felt doomed. Mostly because Zachary was way too good at this. "So," he said, stretching his arm across the back of the couch behind me, "what's our fake relationship history?" I stared at his arm for a second longer than necessary before forcing myself to answer. "We met freshman year?" "Too cliché." "You asked." "Okay, fine." He grinned. "Freshman year. Did we hate each other first?" I snorted. "You watch too many romance movies." "You didn't answer the question." I looked down at the packet to avoid his eyes. "Maybe a little." "Oh my God," he said dramatically. "Enemies to lovers. We are not lovers. Yet." The words slipped out so casually that my brain froze. Zachary froze too. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then he laughed and rubbed the back of his neck. "I mean, in the scenario." "Right," I said quickly, but my chest was pounding now. He cleared his throat and looked back at the packet. "Okay, so fake you thinks fake me is emotionally cheating because I've been texting someone from my lab group too much. You probably are emotionally cheating." He looked offended. "Wow, no trust." "You're too charming. Fake you definitely flirts with everyone." "Interesting." He leaned closer. "And what does fake you think about real me?" My throat went dry. "What?" "You heard me." I laughed nervously. "You're trying to sabotage me." "No," he said quietly. "I'm curious." The way he was looking at me made it impossible to think straight. Thankfully, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, breaking the tension instantly. I grabbed it way too fast. A text from my friend Mason. Mason, how's fake marriage counseling going? I immediately locked my screen before Zachary could see. Too late. Oh my God, he said, laughing. Are people already making fun of us? They started the second Bennett paired us together. That bad? You have no idea, he smirked. Maybe they just think we'd be convincing. I looked away again. This was getting dangerous. We spent the next hour running through the scenario, and somehow it only got worse. Every line sounded accidentally real. You never make time for me anymore. You're being paranoid. I know when someone's pulling away. At first, we kept laughing through the scenes, but eventually something shifted. We got more comfortable, more natural, too natural. At one point, Zachary grabbed my wrist during an argument scene, and both of us went completely silent afterward. Not because it was weird, because it wasn't. His hand stayed there a second too long before he let go. Sorry, he muttered. No, it's fine. Neither of us looked at each other for a moment. Then Zachary exhaled and leaned back against the couch cushions. You know what's messed up? What? We kinda already act like a couple. I nearly choked on air. What? I mean, think about it. He started counting on his fingers. We get lunch together after class. We text constantly. You steal my fries. You offer me fries. Still counts. You're insane. He grinned lazily. Am I wrong? The problem was, he wasn't. And judging by the way he was watching me now, he knew it too. I stood up abruptly. You want another drink? That's your escape plan? I'm getting water. You're flustered again. Shut up. He laughed while I escaped into the kitchen, pressing both hands against the counter once I was out of sight. What the hell was happening tonight? Zachary had always been friendly, but this felt different. Closer. Charged somehow. And I couldn't tell if I was imagining it because I liked him, or if he actually felt it too. I grabbed 2 water bottles from the fridge, trying to calm down. Then Zachary appeared in the kitchen doorway. You okay? His voice was softer now. Yeah. You sure? I nodded too quickly. He studied me for a second before walking closer. The apartment suddenly felt very small. You know, he said quietly, I'm glad I got paired with you. I looked up at him. Why? He shrugged one shoulder, but his eyes stayed on mine. Because you make things fun. God, nobody should have been allowed to look at me like that. I handed him the water bottle mostly so I'd have an excuse to break eye contact. Our fingers brushed. Tiny contact, but it felt electric. And apparently I wasn't the only one who noticed, because Zachary went quiet immediately afterward. Neither of us moved. I could hear my own heartbeat. Then he smiled suddenly, softer than before. This assignment is going to be a disaster. Yeah, I said weakly. It's already messing with my head. Mine too, but I definitely couldn't say that out loud. Instead, I forced a laugh and headed back toward the living room. Come on, I said. Let's finish before Bennett destroys our GPA. Zachary followed me, but something had changed now. The teasing still happened. The jokes still happened. But underneath it, there was this weird tension neither of us seemed able to ignore anymore. And it only got worse when we reached the final page of the packet. Roleplay requirement. Partners must demonstrate realistic physical intimacy appropriate to the relationship dynamic. We both stared at the line, then at each other. Oh, absolutely not, I said immediately. Zachary burst out laughing. She cannot be serious. Nope, we're failing. I'm done. He grabbed the packet from my hands, still laughing. Relax, Trevor. It probably just means holding hands or something. That's still horrifying. You're telling me you can't hold my hand for a class assignment? The smug look on his face made me narrow my eyes. You're enjoying this way too much. A little. Then he held his hand out toward me. Practice? I stared at him, at his hand, then back at his face. You're unbelievable. Trevor. He wiggled his fingers impatiently. Laughing under my breath, I finally put my hand in his and immediately regretted it, because Zachary's expression changed the second our palms touched. The joking disappeared. His grip tightened slightly around mine, warm and steady, and suddenly neither of us was laughing anymore. The room went painfully quiet. He looked down at our hands for a second before slowly looking back up at me. And the way he was staring at me now didn't feel fake at all. I should have pulled my hand away. Seriously, any sane person would have laughed it off after 2 seconds and moved on. Instead, I just sat there staring at Zachary while his thumb brushed lightly against the side of my hand. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough to completely ruin me. You're blushing, he said quietly. I hate you. That's not very supportive boyfriend behavior. I finally yanked my hand back, trying to ignore how warm my face felt. This assignment is stupid. Zachary leaned back against the couch, grinning again. But there was something different in his expression now. Less teasing, more curious. Interesting reaction for someone who claims this is horrifying. I'm reacting because you're weird. Sure. He didn't believe me at all. I grabbed the packet again, mostly so I'd have something to focus on besides him. We should probably figure out the final scene. The jealousy argument? No, the reconciliation scene. He blinked once. Oh. That quiet little reaction did not help my nerves. According to the packet, the final scene involved the couple resolving their conflict and reaffirming emotional commitment, which was academic language for acting painfully in love in front of 30 classmates. I wanted to die. Zachary scooted closer so he could read over my shoulder, and instantly I became hyper-aware of his leg pressing against mine. You think Bennett expects us to improvise this part? He asked. Probably. That's evil. You're the theater kid here. I did one musical in 10th grade. You still sing under your breath during exams. That is slander. I laughed, and he smiled immediately, like he'd been waiting for it. God, he looked good when he smiled like that. Warm, easy, real. Before I could stop myself, I said, You know you flirt with literally everyone, right? The words slipped out accidentally. Zachary looked surprised. Do I? Yes. How? I stared at him. Are you serious? Completely. You say things like, You're cute when you're flustered. Well, he smirked slightly. You are. That's exactly what I mean. He laughed under his breath. Okay, fair. Then he tilted his head, studying me again. But I don't flirt with everyone the same way. The room suddenly felt too warm. What's that supposed to mean? He opened his mouth. Then his phone buzzed loudly. The moment shattered instantly. Zachary groaned and checked the screen. My roommate locked himself out again. You should charge him rent for emotional damage. I already do. He stood up from the couch, stretching his arms over his head. And unfortunately for my sanity, his hoodie lifted slightly, exposing a strip of skin above his waistband. I looked away immediately. Too late. Zachary noticed. That smug idiot definitely noticed. You okay over there? He asked casually. Fantastic. I hated that sound. He grabbed his bag, still watching me with that unreadable little smile. I should probably go rescue him before he breaks the door down. Probably smart, but neither of us moved toward the door right away. The silence between us felt strange now, heavy, like both of us knew something had shifted tonight, but neither wanted to say it first. Then Zachary shoved his hands into his hoodie pocket and looked at me. "You free tomorrow? For practice?" "Sure," he said, way too casually. I narrowed my eyes. "That sounded fake." He grinned. "Maybe I just like hanging out with you." My chest tightened instantly. Oh, that was all my brain could manage. Zachary's expression softened again. "Tomorrow night?" he asked. "Yeah." "Cool." He started toward the door, then paused halfway there. "Hey, Trevor." "Yeah?" "I'm glad this assignment happened." And before I could respond, he left. I did not sleep well that night, at all, because my brain kept replaying every second of the evening like it was trying to torture me personally. The hand-holding, the staring, the way Zachary had said, "Maybe I just like hanging out with you." At around 2 in the morning, Mason called me. "You're awake," he immediately said. "You called me. You sound insane." "I might be." Mason snorted. "So how bad is it?" I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling. I can't tell if Zachary's flirting with me or if he naturally acts like this with everyone. Describe the behavior. He held my hand for too long. Oh, he wants you. You are not helping. Trevor, straight men don't stare deeply into your eyes while pretending to be your fake boyfriend. You'd be surprised. No, you're just blind. I groaned into my pillow. It's probably nothing. Did he ask to see you again tomorrow? Maybe. Mason immediately started cackling. "Oh my God, you're cooked." "Shut up." "No, seriously, this is painful to witness." I rubbed my face. The worst part is I can't tell if I'm imagining all this because I already like him. There was a pause. Then Mason's voice softened slightly. "Trevor." "What?" "You know Zachary looks at you differently than he looks at everyone else, right?" I sat up a little. "What do you mean?" "I've literally watched him ignore entire parties just to sit beside you. That's normal." "It is not." "He's friendly." "Trevor," Mason said slowly, "the man volunteered to spend his Friday night fake dating you. That's for class." "Mm-hmm." I hated how hopeful my chest suddenly felt. Because hope was dangerous, especially with someone like Zachary. The problem was, Mason wasn't completely wrong. The more I thought about it, the more little moments started replaying in my head. Zachary always finding me first in crowded rooms, the constant texting, the random shoulder touches, the way his entire face lit up whenever I laughed at something stupid. I'd convinced myself for months that I was reading too much into it because I wanted it to mean something. But now I wasn't so sure anymore. And apparently, things could still get worse. Because the next afternoon, I walked into psych class early and found Zachary already sitting at our usual table, looking ridiculously good in a black sweatshirt, smiling the second he saw me. Then he patted the empty seat beside him and said the words that almost stopped my heart completely. "There's my boyfriend. There's my boyfriend." I nearly walked straight into a desk. Zachary looked way too pleased with himself as I dropped into the seat beside him. You're actually insane, I muttered. And yet you still came to sit with me. Because this is our table. Our table, he repeated with a grin. That sounds serious. I opened my notebook aggressively to avoid looking at him. It didn't help, especially because he kept leaning over while Bennett talked, whispering comments directly into my ear. Do you think she regrets assigning this project yet? She should. You're blushing again. I'm going to kill you. He laughed softly, and I caught two girls across the room staring at us with identical expressions of disbelief. One of them mouthed, "Oh my God," to the other. Fantastic. By the end of class, Bennett reminded everyone that performances were tomorrow. Make it believable, she warned. I want realism. Zachary raised his hand immediately. How realistic are we talking? The class burst out laughing. Even Bennett smirked. Use your judgment, Mr. Collins. I'm suddenly afraid, I muttered. You should trust me more. That's exactly why I'm afraid. As everyone started packing up, Zachary nudged my shoulder. You hungry? Always. Come get lunch with me. The way he said it sounded less like a question and more like a habit. And honestly, it kind of was. 20 minutes later, we were sitting across from each other at a diner off campus, splitting fries because apparently Zachary had decided that was legally our thing now. You know, he said casually, people really think we're together. I almost inhaled a fry. What? I heard Jenna asking if we were secretly dating. My stomach flipped. What did you say? That I'd never reveal our passionate love story. Zachary. He grinned. Then his expression softened a little. But seriously, does it bother you? I looked up. He was watching me carefully now. No, I admitted quietly. Good. Something about the way he said that made my chest feel tight again. We fell into a comfortable silence after that, but it wasn't awkward. It never really was with him. That was part of the problem. Being around Zachary always felt easy. Too easy. At one point, he reached across the table to steal one of my fries, and without thinking, I slapped his hand away. He stared at me dramatically. You wound me. You're a thief. I thought we shared everything. I rolled my eyes, but he was smiling at me in that soft way again, like he liked watching me, like he couldn't help it. God. By the time we left the diner, my feelings were in critical condition. And apparently Zachary wasn't done making things worse. Because while we walked back across campus, he suddenly bumped his shoulder against mine and said, "Come to this party with me tonight." I blinked. What party? Tyler's. I wasn't invited. Neither was Tyler's neighbor, and he's apparently bringing 3 people. That's not reassuring. Zachary laughed. Come on, it'll be fun. I should have said no. Instead, I heard myself ask, are you just trying to get more fake boyfriend practice? He looked sideways at me. Maybe I just want you there. That stupid warm feeling hit my chest again. Fine, I muttered. His grin immediately widened. Nice. I'll pick you up at 8. Going to a crowded college party with your crush was already stressful. Going to a crowded college party with your crush after spending a week fake dating him was psychological warfare. The second I opened my apartment door at 8, Zachary looked me up and down once and said, "Okay, wow." I immediately forgot how to breathe. What? That color looks good on you. I looked down at my dark green sweater, then back at him. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because I'm hanging on by a thread, actually. Instead, I just grabbed my jacket and shoved past him into the hallway. You're terrible. He laughed and followed me downstairs. The party was already packed when we got there. Music shook the walls. People crowded every room, and the entire place smelled like cheap alcohol and bad decisions. Zachary stayed close beside me the whole time, closer than necessary. Every time someone bumped into me, his hand would land on my back automatically, like he was guiding me through the crowd. It felt dangerously natural. At one point, Tyler spotted us from across the kitchen and yelled, "Bro, you finally brought your boyfriend." I nearly died on the spot. But Zachary just laughed. "Yeah, he's high maintenance though." The room cracked up. I stared at him. "You're enjoying this entirely too much." "A little." Someone shoved drinks into our hands, and before long, we ended up squeezed onto a couch together while people played some loud drinking game nearby. And somehow, Zachary kept drifting closer. His knee pressed against mine. Then his arm settled behind me along the couch cushions. Then at some point, his fingers started absently playing with the sleeve of my sweater while he talked to someone. Like he didn't even realize he was doing it. Or worse, like he did. "You two are disgustingly coupley," Tyler's roommate said while passing by. Neither of us answered immediately because honestly, it kind of felt true. A while later, Zachary leaned down close to my ear so I could hear him over the music. "You want to get out of here for a minute?" The warmth of his breath against my skin made my brain completely short-circuit. "Okay," I said way too fast. He smiled. Then he grabbed my wrist gently and led me through the crowd toward the back porch. Cold night air hit instantly once the door shut behind us. The noise from inside became muffled, and suddenly, it was just us. Zachary leaned against the railing beside me, looking out over the dark backyard. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he glanced sideways at me. "You nervous about tomorrow? The presentation?" "Yeah, a little. We'll be fine." Easy for him to say. He wasn't seconds away from causing me cardiac arrest every time he smiled. "You know what's funny?" he said quietly. "What?" "I usually hate assignments like this." I looked over at him. But, he smiled a little. "I kinda liked pretending with you." My heartbeat stumbled. The porch suddenly felt very small. "You did?" "Yeah." His voice had gone softer now, more honest. And the way he was looking at me again. God. I swallowed hard. "Zachary." Before I could finish, the porch door burst open behind us. A drunk guy stumbled outside, spotted us, and immediately pointed. "There they are!" he shouted back into the house. "The psych class boyfriends!" I covered my face instantly while Zachary started laughing so hard he nearly doubled over. And somehow, impossibly, that only made me like him more. I woke up the next morning with a hangover, not from alcohol, from Zachary. Every single thing about last night kept replaying in my head while I got ready for class. "I kinda like pretending with you." Normal people did not say things like that casually. At least I didn't think they did. By the time I reached campus, my nerves were already wrecked. Today was presentation day, which meant in less than an hour, Zachary and I were going to stand in front of our entire psych class and pretend to be boyfriends having an emotional relationship crisis. Amazing. I spotted him outside the classroom immediately, and apparently, my heart had decided humiliation wasn't enough, because the second he looked up and saw me, his entire face lit up. "There he is," he said. The smile that followed should have been illegal. "You look nervous. I might throw up. You'll survive." Easy for him to say. He looked completely relaxed leaning against the hallway wall, in a navy hoodie with messy hair, like he just walked out of a cologne ad. I hated him. "You know," he said casually, stepping beside me as we walked in the class, "if we fail this assignment, we can always run away together. That's your solution to everything. And yet you keep hanging out with me." Fair point. The classroom buzzed with nervous energy while other pairs practiced quietly. Some people were reading cue cards. Others looked ready to cry. Meanwhile, Zachary dropped into his seat beside me like this was the easiest thing in the world. Then he leaned closer. "Trevor." "What?" "If you panic during the scene, just look at me." I blinked. "What?" "I mean it." His voice softened slightly. "Forget everyone else. Just focus on me." That did not help my heartbeat situation. At all. Before I could respond, Bennett clapped her hands. "All right, everyone, let's begin." And suddenly, I wanted to die again. The first few presentations were disasters. One couple laughed through the entire thing. Another pair sounded like robots reading customer service scripts. Bennett looked progressively more disappointed after each group. Then she called our names. "Zachary and Trevor." My stomach immediately flipped. Zachary stood up first and held his hand out toward me dramatically. "Ready, babe?" The class lost it. I buried my face in my hands while standing. "You're the worst." "But I'm your worst." I heard someone in the back whisper, "Oh, they're definitely into each other." Fantastic. We moved to the front of the room while Bennett flipped through her grading sheet. "Whenever you're ready." I looked at Zachary. He looked completely calm. Then, very quietly, so only I could hear, he said, "Just focus on me." And somehow, I did. The scene started simple enough. We sat facing each other in two classroom chairs, pretending they were a couch. Zachary leaned forward first. "You've been distant with me for weeks." Instantly his tone changed. Softer, more serious. Real. I swallowed hard and answered my line. "I'm not distant. You barely even look at me anymore." The room disappeared a little after that, because Zachary kept looking directly into my eyes while we talked, and somehow it stopped feeling like acting. "You tell other people things before you tell me." "That's not true." "It is," he said quietly. "I feel like I'm losing you." Something twisted painfully in my chest at the way he said it. Then came the improv section, the dangerous part. Bennett specifically wanted natural emotional escalation, which meant we had to keep going without the script. And apparently, Zachary had decided to destroy me personally. "Tell me the truth," he said softly. "Is there someone else?" The room got very quiet. I stared at him, trying to think of a response, but the way he was looking at me made my brain completely blank. Then somehow, I heard myself say, "No, there's just you." A few people audibly reacted behind us. Zachary blinked once, like I'd surprised him too, but he recovered fast. "Then why does it feel like you keep pulling away from me?" His voice had gone quieter now, more intimate. And suddenly this did not feel like a class assignment anymore. I swallowed. "Because I don't know if this is real." Complete silence. Even Bennett stopped writing. Zachary stared at me for one long second. Then he stood up from his chair, not part of the script. My heart immediately started pounding. He stepped closer until he was right in front of me. "Trevor," he said softly, still fully in character, but somehow not. "What?" Then he reached down and took my hand. The classroom completely exploded. People yelling, laughing, whistling. but I barely heard any of it because Zachary was still looking at me like we were the only two people in the room, and his thumb brushed against my hand again, exactly like it had the other night. "You're overthinking everything," he said quietly. I forgot every line we'd prepared. Every coherent thought vanished instantly. Then Bennett finally interrupted. "Okay, wow," she said, laughing while half the class continued losing their minds. That was disturbingly convincing. Zachary grinned without looking away from me. "Method acting." "Sure," Bennett said knowingly. I should have let go of his hand then. Instead, neither of us moved. And for one terrifying second, it honestly felt like he might kiss me right there in front of everyone. Then someone in the back yelled, "Just date already!" The room erupted again. I finally snapped back to reality and pulled my hand away so fast it was embarrassing. My face was burning. Zachary looked weirdly disappointed for half a second before smiling again. We sat back down while the next group prepared, but now the entire class kept staring at us. Or, more specifically, at the space between us. Because whatever had just happened up there, everyone noticed it, including me. And judging by the way Zachary kept glancing over at me afterward, including him too. The second class ended. I tried to escape. Not because the presentation went badly. Honestly, that was the problem. It went way too well. People kept stopping us on the way out. "Dude, what the hell was that? You two better actually date after this. That hand-holding was insane." I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Meanwhile, Zachary looked completely entertained. "Thank you," he told one guy dramatically. "We really believed in the emotional arc." "You're unbelievable," I muttered once we finally escaped into the hallway. He bumped his shoulder lightly against mine. "You survived." "Barely." "You were really good up there." The compliment hit harder than it should have. "So were you." His smile softened again. There it was, that look, the one that kept making my chest tighten every time he aimed it at me. We walked slowly through campus together while students rushed around us between classes. Neither of us seemed in a hurry to leave, probably because we both knew something weird had happened in that classroom. Something neither of us knew how to talk about yet. "You improv'd half that scene," I finally said. "So did you. That wasn't planned." "I know." His voice sounded quieter now. I shoved my hands into my pockets. "You grabbing my hand definitely wasn't planned." Zachary glanced sideways at me. "Did you want me to stop?" "No, absolutely not." But saying that out loud felt dangerous. "I just wasn't expecting it," I answered carefully. He nodded once. Then after a second, "You looked scared." I was. "Of the presentation?" I looked at him. He already knew the answer. Zachary slowed to a stop near the Student Union building, turning toward me fully now while people passed around us. "Trevor," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" My heartbeat immediately sped up again. "Okay." When we were up there, he hesitated for the first time all week. "Did any of that feel real to you?" The world genuinely stopped for a second. I stared at him, at the nervousness hiding underneath his expression. And suddenly, everything Mason said came crashing back into my brain. The man volunteered to spend his Friday night fake dating you. I swallowed hard. "You seriously picked now to ask me that?" A nervous laugh escaped him. Probably not ideal timing. No kidding. But neither of us moved. People brushed past us on the sidewalk, while this huge, terrifying silence stretched between us. Then Zachary stepped a little closer. And quieter this time, he said, because it felt real to me. My chest physically hurt. I looked away immediately, overwhelmed so fast it almost made me dizzy. Trevor, I don't know what you want me to say. The truth. I laughed nervously and rubbed the back of my neck. The truth is, you've been confusing the hell out of me for like 2 weeks. His mouth twitched slightly. Same. That's not funny. I know. I finally looked back at him. Big mistake. Because now he looked nervous too. And somehow that made this even more real. I kept thinking I was imagining things, I admitted quietly. You weren't. You flirt with everyone. Not like this. The exact same thing he almost said the other night. Except now, neither of us was pretending not to understand it. My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. So what does this mean? I asked. Zachary exhaled slowly. I honestly don't know yet. That honesty weirdly made me feel calmer. He wasn't acting smooth anymore. He was just real. I've never felt like this about a guy before, he admitted. At least not one I actually wanted to do something about. I stared at him, and suddenly, every tiny moment from the past few months made sense. The constant attention, the staring, the touching, the jealousy anytime I mentioned dating someone else. God, you're serious, I said quietly. Very. My entire brain short-circuited. Zachary laughed softly at my expression. You look like you're buffering. I kind of am. That's fair. Neither of us spoke for another second. Then Zachary looked down briefly before meeting my eyes again. Can I be honest about something else? Sure. When that guy yelled, "Just date already," he smiled nervously. Part of me wanted to. I think my soul temporarily left my body. Zachary, I know this is sudden. No, it's just... I laughed once in disbelief. You have no idea how long I've liked you. That got his attention immediately. His eyes widened slightly. How long? Embarrassingly long. A slow smile spread across his face. Seriously? You're not allowed to enjoy this. I'm absolutely enjoying this. I groaned and covered my face. Then he gently grabbed my wrist and pulled my hand away again, the same way he had during the presentation. Only this time, there wasn't a classroom watching us, just him. And the look on his face right now was so soft, it almost hurt to look at. So what do we do now? He asked quietly. I looked down at our hands, then back at him. I honestly have no idea. Want to figure it out with me? God, nobody should have been allowed to ask questions like that while looking at someone that way. I laughed nervously again because my brain had completely stopped functioning, and Zachary smiled. Then, very gently, he squeezed my hand once. Not fake this time, not acting, just real. Things got very quiet after that. Not awkward quiet, just overwhelmed quiet. Because Zachary was still holding my hand outside the student union, like this was the most natural thing in the world. And meanwhile, my brain was trying to process the fact that my crush apparently liked me back. After months, maybe longer. This feels insane, I admitted. A little. You couldn't have picked an easier way to tell me? He laughed softly. What was I supposed to do? Send you a PowerPoint? Yes, that's fair. I smiled despite myself. And immediately Zachary's expression softened again, like seeing me smile physically affected him somehow. You know what's weird? He said quietly. What? I thought you were completely out of my league. I stared at him. Excuse me? I'm serious. You are objectively one of the hottest people on this campus. He burst out laughing. Wow, okay. Didn't expect you to say that out loud. My face heated instantly. Forget I said anything. Absolutely not. I groaned while he grinned at me like he'd just won something. Then his smile faded slightly into something more nervous. I really didn't know if you liked me back. Zachary, I said incredulously. You basically fake dated me for a week. Yeah, but you're hard to read sometimes. I am not. You absolutely are. He wasn't entirely wrong. I looked down at our hands again, still tangled together, still real. Then I glanced back up at him. So, what now? Zachary tilted his head slightly. Well, he squeezed my hand once more. I could take you on an actual date. The word actual made my stomach flip violently. You're serious? I'd hope so, considering I've been flirting with you for months. Months? Trevor, he laughed. I literally skipped a football game because you said you were stressed studying for finals. Oh, you thought I just really hated sports? I didn't think this through. Clearly. I covered my face again while he laughed. This was humiliating. Wonderful, but humiliating. Then Zachary gently pulled my hands away from my face. Again. You know, he said softly, you do this every time you get overwhelmed. What? Hiding your face. I'm not overwhelmed. You're blushing. I hate you. No, you don't. The stupid thing was, he sounded so sure, and honestly, he should have been. People moved around us across campus while we stood there smiling at each other like idiots. It felt strangely unreal. Like at any second, I was going to wake up back in psych class before Bennett ever assigned this stupid project. Then Zachary glanced toward the coffee shop across the street. Come with me. Where? You'll see. You say that like a serial killer. Trevor. Still holding my hand, he started leading me across campus. And honestly, I let him. The coffee shop was mostly empty when we walked in. Quiet music played overhead, while students worked at tables scattered around the room. The girl behind the counter looked up at us, then immediately looked down at our joined hands, then smiled knowingly. Oh my God, I whispered. Zachary looked way too entertained. What can I get for you guys? The cashier asked. You order, Zachary told me. What? It's your reward for surviving relationship trauma. I snorted. 5 minutes later, we were sitting in the corner booth with coffee and pastries we absolutely didn't need. And somehow, this felt even more intimate than the fake relationship stuff, because now there wasn't an assignment behind it. No excuse, no pretending, just us. So, Zachary said, leaning back in the booth, I should probably confess something. That sounds dangerous. It probably is. I narrowed my eyes. Okay. The first time we hung out alone, he looked suddenly embarrassed. I spent like an hour choosing a shirt. I stared at him, then immediately started laughing. No way. Yes way. You're lying. I'm not. That's actually pathetic. You cleaned your apartment twice before I came over. I nearly choked on my coffee. How do you know that? You told Mason. My eyes widened. You talked to Mason? He cornered me after class yesterday. Oh my God. Zachary was laughing hard now. He basically threatened me emotionally. That sounds like him. He also said if I hurt you, he'd ruin my life. Yeah, definitely him. I shook my head in disbelief. Then after a second, quieter this time, I asked, "What did you tell him?" Zachary's expression softened instantly. The truth. And that was? He looked directly at me. That I really like you. My chest tightened all over again. The scary part was how genuine he sounded every single time he said things like that. No teasing, no joking, just honest. You know, I admitted quietly, I think this might be the first time I've ever seen you nervous. Oh, I've been nervous constantly. You hide it well. Not really. He smiled a little. I almost kissed you after the presentation. My entire brain stopped functioning again. What? The hand-holding part. He looked down at his coffee briefly before looking back at me. I kind of forgot everyone else was there. The room suddenly felt warmer, because honestly, I'd felt it too. That moment where everything else disappeared except him. I thought you might, I admitted. And part of me wanted you to. Zachary went completely still. Neither of us moved for a second. Then very slowly, he smiled. Not smug this time, not teasing, just happy, like hearing that genuinely mattered to him. And somehow that feeling right there, that soft look across the tiny coffee shop table, it felt way more terrifying than all the flirting. Because this wasn't pretending anymore. This was real. The weirdest part about finally knowing Zachary liked me back was how quickly everything changed. And at the same time, how natural it felt. We stayed in that coffee shop for almost 2 hours just talking. Not fake flirting, not dancing around things. Actually talking. About when it started. About all the moments we'd both apparently been overanalyzing for months. You seriously got jealous of Mason? I asked at one point. Zachary looked offended. The man is emotionally attached to you. He's my best friend. He called you baby once. That was ironic. Was it? I laughed so hard coffee nearly came out my nose. Then Zachary smiled at me again like that was his favorite thing in the world. Honestly, maybe it was. At some point the conversation slowed. Not awkwardly, just softer. The afternoon sunlight through the windows had turned golden, and Zachary was still looking at me in that impossibly warm way that made my chest feel completely wrecked. Then he glanced down briefly before looking back up. So, I already knew that tone. What? You know we still haven't resolved something. I narrowed my eyes suspiciously. What? The almost kiss. My entire nervous system immediately crashed. Oh. Yeah. Oh. I looked away so fast it made him laugh quietly. You're doing the face thing again. I need you to stop noticing things. Can't. The honesty in his voice hit me harder than the flirting ever did. Because he meant it. I could tell. And apparently Zachary had decided to completely ruin any remaining stability in my life. Because a second later he asked softly, "Can I kiss you now?" No jokes, no teasing, just genuine nervousness, waiting for me. I stared at him across the tiny table, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Then, like an idiot, I whispered, "You really have to stop asking me things while looking like that." He laughed once under his breath. "That's not an answer." I swallowed hard, then nodded. And suddenly Zachary looked nervous again, actually nervous, which somehow made this feel even more real. He stood up first, walking around the table toward me slowly, like he was giving me time to change my mind. I didn't, not even close. When he stopped beside my chair, his hand slid gently along my jaw for half a second before he leaned down. And then finally, he kissed me. Soft at first, careful, like he was still making sure this was real. My brain completely stopped working the second his lips touched mine, because somehow the kiss felt exactly like everything else with Zachary had felt all week. Easy, natural, right. I grabbed the front of his hoodie before I could overthink it, and I felt him smile against my mouth immediately. That tiny reaction absolutely destroyed me. The kiss deepened slightly after that, still soft, still warm, but real enough to send my heartbeat completely out of control. And honestly, it was worth every second of confusion leading up to this. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us moved far. Zachary stayed close enough that our foreheads almost touched, smiling in that dazed way people do after kissing someone they've wanted for a long time. "Well," he murmured softly. "Well," I echoed. "That was definitely not for class." I laughed breathlessly. "No, I think Bennett would have failed us for that. She'd probably say we lacked professionalism." "We absolutely lacked professionalism." He grinned, then kissed me again quickly before pulling back. And yeah, that one definitely wasn't careful. A girl behind the counter quietly whispered, "Finally," to her coworker, and I buried my face against Zachary's shoulder immediately while he started laughing. "Oh my God. They've been watching us for like 2 hours," he said. "I'm never coming back here." "Yes, you are." "Never." Still laughing, he wrapped an arm loosely around my waist and guided me outside into the cool evening air. Campus looked different somehow, or maybe I did, because now Zachary's hand kept brushing mine while we walked, and neither of us pretended it was accidental anymore. At one point, he glanced over at me and smiled. "What? You're smiling?" "I am not." "You absolutely are." I rolled my eyes, but he was right. I couldn't stop. Halfway across campus, Zachary suddenly stopped walking. "What?" He looked weirdly thoughtful for a second. Then, "You know this whole thing started because of a fake relationship assignment." "Unfortunately." "But technically," he stepped closer again, "we never actually stopped pretending." I laughed softly. That line was terrible. "I know," he grinned. "You still like me, though." "Debatable." "Liar." Then he kissed me again, right there in the middle of campus. And this time, I kissed him back without hesitation. A couple people walking by cheered. Someone yelled, "The psych class boyfriends." I immediately started laughing against Zachary's mouth while he pulled me closer. Honestly, at that point, maybe they were right. Because somewhere between the fake jealousy arguments, the hand-holding, the late-night practice sessions, and the way Zachary kept looking at me like I mattered, pretending had become something real. And somehow, unbelievably, my crush had turned into my boyfriend.